What you're about to hear is the confession of a man who wore a badge for 23 years while committing crimes that would make hardened criminals sick to their stomachs. This is the story of Detective Raymond Cole, LAPD, a man who started as a hero and became something far worse than the criminals he was supposed to catch. And the most disturbing part? He agreed to tell me everything, every detail, every victim, every twisted justification for what he did. Because in his mind, he wasn't the villain. He was just a cop doing what needed to be done. I met Raymond Cole on a Tuesday afternoon in November 2019 at California State Prison, Corcoran, maximum security. He's serving 6 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. The guards told me he'd been waiting for this interview for 3 years, that he had a story to tell, and I was the first journalist he'd agreed to talk to. When they brought him into the visiting room, I didn't know what to expect. A monster? A psychopath? What I got was a 62-year-old man with gray hair, reading glasses, and a calm demeanor that made him look like someone's grandfather. He sat down across from me, smiled, and said the words that still give me chills. "Thank you for coming. Nobody wants to hear the truth anymore, but you will. You'll understand why I did what I did." This is that interview, and I warn you, it's going to get dark, real dark. Raymond Cole was born in 1957 in Inglewood, California. His father was a mechanic. His mother was a school teacher. Normal family. Normal childhood. He told me he always wanted to be a cop, ever since he was 8 years old and saw an LAPD officer break up a fight outside his school. The officer didn't use his gun, didn't use his baton, just talked the 2 men down, calm, professional, in control. That's what Cole wanted, control. He joined the LAPD in 1979, fresh out of the academy at 22 years old. His first assignment was West LA Division, working patrol. For the first 5 years, by all accounts, he was a good cop. Commendations, clean record. His partners liked him. His superiors trusted him. In 1984, he made detective. That's when everything changed. Cole leaned forward during our interview, his hands folded on the table between us, and said something I'll never forget. "You want to know when I crossed the line? I'll tell you exactly when. March 17th, 1985. I was working a homicide in Venice Beach. 23-year-old. Girl found strangled in her apartment. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. Killer knew her. We had a suspect within 48 hours. Guy named Marcus Webb. Ex-boyfriend. History of domestic violence. Perfect suspect. Except we had no physical evidence. Nothing linking him to the scene. The DA said we didn't have enough for an arrest. He paused, his jaw tightening. So I manufactured it. I took one of Webb's cigarette butts from his car during a traffic stop, planted it at the crime scene, called it in like I just found it. Boom. DNA match. Webb got 25 to life. Case closed. I asked him the obvious question. But what if Webb was innocent? Cole laughed. Not a cruel laugh, just matter of fact. He wasn't innocent. I knew he did it. I could feel it. But the system would have let him walk because we didn't have a perfect case. So I made it perfect. That was the first time. Cole went on to tell me that over the next 15 years, he planted evidence in over 40 cases. Drugs on suspects he knew were dealers, but couldn't prove it. Weapons in the cars of gang members he knew were shooters. Blood-stained clothing in the homes of people he was certain committed murders. And every single time he told himself the same thing. These people were guilty. The system just needed help seeing it. But here's where it gets worse. In 1992, after the Rodney King riots tore Los Angeles apart, the LAPD was under intense scrutiny. Federal oversight, new policies. Body cameras were being discussed. Cole saw it as the department being handcuffed, being prevented from doing real police work. He told me that's when he started meeting with other detectives who felt the same way. Secret meetings at a bar in Culver City called McGinty's No Cameras, cash only. The owner was ex-LAPD, and he made sure nobody bothered them. There were 7 of them initially. Detectives from different divisions: West LA, Hollywood, Rampart, Newton. They called themselves the board, not because they made decisions for the department, but because they kept score. Who had the most arrests? Who had the highest conviction rate? Who was really cleaning up the streets? Cole described their meetings with a nostalgia that made my skin crawl. We'd sit there, drink whiskey, and talk about our cases, share techniques, cover for each other. If one of us planted evidence and internal affairs came sniffing around, the other 6 would provide alibis, witness statements, whatever was needed. We were bulletproof for a while. I asked him what changed, what made him go from planting evidence to what he eventually did. He looked at me with those calm gray eyes and said something that explained everything. The criminals got smarter. They knew the system. They knew their rights. They hired expensive lawyers who could get evidence thrown out on technicalities. So we had to adapt. We had to become smarter, too. In 1995, Cole arrested a drug dealer named Tyrone Jenkins, major player in the cocaine trade operating out of South Central. Cole had been tracking Jenkins for 2 years, but could never make anything stick. Jenkins was careful, used intermediaries, never touched the product himself. But Cole knew Jenkins was responsible for at least 3 murders, rival dealers who got in his way. One night in August 1995, Cole pulled Jenkins over for a broken taillight, routine traffic stop. But when Jenkins stepped out of his car, Cole saw an opportunity. He told me this part with absolutely no emotion in his voice. I had a throwaway piece in my trunk. I interrupted Cole. What could be worse than planting a murder weapon on someone? He smiled, a cold, empty smile. 6 months later, Jenkins's lawyer filed an appeal. New evidence had surfaced. Video from a gas station showing Jenkins was nowhere near that liquor store robbery. The gun couldn't have been his. The appeal was gaining traction. Jenkins might get out. Cole paused, letting the implications sink in. So I made sure he didn't. I asked how. Cole's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I had a friend in Corcoran, another detective who'd retired and took a job as a correctional officer. I called in a favor, told him Jenkins was a snitch, that he was cooperating with the feds on a major gang investigation. I knew what would happen. 2 weeks later, Jenkins was found dead in the prison yard, stabbed 47 times by members of the Black Guerrilla family. Case closed. Appeal dismissed. I felt physically sick listening to this. You ordered a hit on an inmate? Cole shook his head. I didn't order anything. I just provided information. What happened after that wasn't my responsibility. Do you understand the distinction I'm making? These people, they operated by their own code. I just worked within that system. This is the kind of mental gymnastics Cole used to justify everything he did. He didn't see himself as a murderer. He saw himself as someone who understood how the streets really worked and used that knowledge to achieve justice. His version of justice. Over the next hour, Cole walked me through case after case. A prostitute who oohed after Cole gave her contaminated heroin to sell to a pimp he was targeting. A gang member who died in a staged car accident after Cole tampered with his brake line. A defense attorney who was disbarred and driven to suicide after Cole framed him for soliciting a minor. The attorney had gotten 3 of Cole's cases thrown out on procedural errors. Cole decided he needed to be removed from the equation. By 1998, the board had expanded to 12 detectives. They were operating across the entire city, planting evidence, intimidating witnesses, even staging crimes to justify arrests. Cole told me about one operation in particular that showed how far they'd gone. We identified a neighborhood in Echo Park that was being taken over by MS-13, violent gang. But they were smart. No open dealing, no visible weapons. They kept everything underground. The community was terrified, but nobody would testify. So we created a situation. Cole explained it methodically, like he was describing a military operation. We set up a fake drug by using an undercover officer, but we made sure it happened in front of witnesses, civilians who would call it in. When MS-13 showed up, we had units waiting. But here's the thing, the gang members weren't armed, so we planted guns on them. 3 9mm that had been used in previous crimes, matched them to unsolved murders. Those gang members went away for life. I asked if any of them were actually guilty of those murders. Cole shrugged. Maybe. Probably. Does it matter? They were MS-13. They'd killed people. Just maybe not those specific people. But they were guilty of something. I pressed him. That's not how justice works. That's not how the law works. And that's when Cole got animated for the first time. His voice rose. His hands gestured emphatically. The law is a game played by rich lawyers and career criminals who know every loophole. Meanwhile, real people are dying in the streets, families are being destroyed, neighborhoods are being abandoned, and cops who actually want to fix it. We're told to follow procedure, to respect rights, to build perfect cases. But perfect cases don't exist in the real world, so you do what's necessary. This was Cole's entire worldview. He genuinely believed that the ends justified the means, that saving hypothetical future victims was worth framing present suspects, that being a quote-unquote good cop meant being willing to break the rules to achieve results. For 11 years, from 1995 to 2006, Cole and the board operated with impunity. They manipulated evidence in hundreds of cases. They eliminated threats to their operations. They covered for each other. And the LAPD's crime statistics looked great. Arrest rates up. Conviction rates up. Major gang figures off the streets. Nobody asked too many questions about how it was happening. But in 2006, everything started to unravel. A public defender named Sarah Mitchell was working a case involving one of Cole's arrests. A gang member accused of murder based on ballistic evidence. But Mitchell noticed something odd. The bullet that killed the victim didn't match the gun found on her client. Not even close, different caliber. She started digging, looking at other cases Cole had worked, and she found patterns, evidence that appeared too conveniently. Witnesses who gave identical statements, guns that kept showing up in unrelated cases. Mitchell took her findings to the FBI, not LAPD internal affairs. She didn't trust them. The FBI opened a quiet investigation in early 2007. They were careful, methodical. They didn't tip their hand. Cole told me he didn't even know he was being investigated until the day they arrested him. September 12, 2008. I was at my desk in Hollywood Division, working a case. 2 FBI agents walked in with a U.S. Marshal, arrested me right there in front of everyone. Corruption, evidence tampering, conspiracy, civil rights violations. The list went on and on. At first I thought I could beat it. I had the board. We'd protected each other for years. But here's what I didn't know. One of them had already flipped. Detective Marcus Brennan, one of the original 7 from McGenty's bar. He'd been offered immunity in exchange for testimony, and he gave them everything, every meeting. Every planted piece of evidence, every staged crime, names, dates, detail. Cole's voice got bitter when he talked about Brennan. 20 years I knew that man, worked cases with him, covered for him, and he sold us out the moment it benefited him. That's the thing about corrupt cops. There's no honor, no loyalty. Everyone's just trying to save themselves. The irony of Cole not seeing his own hypocrisy was stunning. The trial lasted 7 months, the longest corruption trial in LAPD history. 12 detectives indicted, 8 convicted. Cole was the ringleader. The prosecution showed that he'd personally been involved in tampering with evidence in 93 cases. 93, and those were just the ones they could prove. The real number was probably much higher. But here's the most disturbing part of my interview with Cole, when I asked him about the innocent people, the ones who went to prison because of evidence he planted, the ones who died because of his actions. He didn't show remorse, he showed frustration. You keep saying innocent, he said, but none of them were innocent. Maybe they didn't commit the specific crime I arrested them for, but they'd committed others. You don't understand how the streets work. These weren't good people making mistakes. These were predators, career criminals. The world is better off with them locked up or dead, regardless of the legal technicalities. I asked about Tyrone Jenkins specifically, the man he'd had killed in prison. Did Jenkins deserve to die? Cole didn't hesitate. Yes, Jenkins had killed 3 people. Maybe not the liquor store clerk, but 3 rival dealers. I knew it. Everyone knew it. But we couldn't prove it. So when the opportunity came to make sure he stayed behind bars permanently, I took it. I'd do it again. This is what makes Raymond Cole so terrifying. He's not insane. He's not a psychopath lacking empathy. He's a true believer. He genuinely thinks he was doing the right thing, that the rules didn't apply to him because he was fighting for a greater good. It's the same mentality that drives terrorists, cult leaders, and dictators. The certainty that your cause is so righteous that any action is justified. During our interview, I asked Cole if he understood why he was in prison. If he grasped that what he did was wrong, he tilted his head, considering the question. I'm in prison because I got caught, because one of my own people betrayed me, because the system protects criminals more than it protects cops trying to do their jobs. Is what I did illegal? Yes. Was it wrong? No, I saved lives. I stopped dangerous people. I made Los Angeles safer. That's not wrong. That's duty. I pointed out that the courts disagreed, that a jury of his peers found him guilty on all counts, that judges sentenced him to life in prison. Cole smiled again, that same cold, empty smile. Juries believe what they're told. Judges apply laws written by politicians who've never worked a day on the streets. They don't understand what it takes to actually fight crime. They sit in their courtrooms and their offices, and they judge people like me who do the real work. Their opinion doesn't change what I know to be true. I asked if there was anything he regretted, anything he'd do differently if he could go back. Cole thought for a long moment. The only thing I regret is trusting Marcus Brennan. If I'd kept the board smaller, tighter, we could have kept operating. We were making a real difference. Crime was down in our divisions. Major cases were being solved. But I got greedy. I expanded too fast. Brought in people who didn't have the conviction to see it through. That was my mistake. Not what we did, but who we trusted to do it with. This is the mind of Raymond Cole. Even after everything, even sitting in a maximum security prison for the rest of his life, he still believes he was right. Still believes he was a hero betrayed by a corrupt system rather than a criminal caught by it. Before I left, I asked Cole one final question. If you could speak to young cops just starting out, what would you tell them? He leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head, completely relaxed. I'd tell them the truth. The justice system is broken. It protects the guilty and punishes the innocent. If you want to really make a difference, you have to be willing to work outside the system, to do what's necessary, not what's legal. The good guys should win. And sometimes that means bending the rules, or breaking them completely. I'd tell them to find other cops who think like they do, build a team, protect each other, and never, ever trust anyone who hasn't proven they're willing to go as far as you are. Because the moment things get hot, everyone's looking for a deal. Everyone's looking to save themselves. So you build a team that won't crack, that won't fold, and you do whatever it takes to win. As the guards took Cole back to his cell, I sat there, processing everything I'd just heard. This wasn't a remorseful criminal seeking redemption. This was a man who'd used his badge as a weapon for over 2 decades and still believed he was justified, who destroyed lives, ended lives, and corrupted the entire purpose of law enforcement, all while convincing himself he was the hero. The scariest part? Raymond Cole isn't unique. After his arrest, the LAPD launched internal investigations that uncovered similar corruption in multiple divisions. Officers who believed the same things Cole did. That justice was more important than law. That results mattered more than methods. That they were soldiers in a war, and wars have casualties. Some of them are still out there, still wearing badges, still convinced they're doing the right thing. The question we have to ask ourselves is this: how did we get here? How did the LAPD, an institution designed to protect and serve, produce someone like Raymond Cole? And more importantly, how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? Because Cole told me something as I was leaving that stayed with me ever since. You think I'm the villain in this story, but I'm not. I'm just the one who got caught. There are dozens more like me still working, still planting evidence, still manipulating the system. The only difference is they learned from my mistakes. They're smarter, more careful, more selective about who they trust. You want to know who the real villains are? Look at the cops with the highest arrest rates, the ones with perfect conviction records. Ask yourself how they're doing it, because nobody's that good. Nobody's that lucky. They're just better at hiding it than I was. Raymond Cole's conviction was one of the biggest scandals in LAPD history. It exposed systemic corruption that had been operating for years, led to the overturning of dozens of convictions, released multiple people who'd been imprisoned on false evidence. But it also revealed something more disturbing, that within law enforcement there's a mentality that can transform good people into monsters. The belief that they're above the law because they're enforcing it, that their judgment is infallible, that the ends always justify the means. Cole started as a cop who wanted to help people, who saw injustice and wanted to fix it. But somewhere along the way, he crossed a line. And once you cross that first line, the second one is easier, and the third, and the fourth, until you're ordering hits on inmates and planting murder weapons and convincing yourself you're still one of the good guys. The lessons from Raymond Cole's story are clear. Power without accountability leads to abuse. Certainty without doubt leads to atrocity. And the most dangerous people in the world aren't the ones who know they're doing evil. They're the ones who are absolutely convinced they're doing good. Cole will die in prison. He'll never walk free, never wear a badge again, never have the power to destroy another life. But his ideology? That's still out there, still being whispered in the locker rooms and squad cars of police departments across the country. The idea that real cops do whatever it takes, that results matter more than methods, that justice is more important than law, As long as that ideology exists, there will be more Raymond Coles, more cops who start as heroes and become villains, more lives destroyed in the name of protecting them. So what would you do if you were a cop and you knew, absolutely knew, that someone was guilty, but you couldn't prove it? Would you plant evidence? Would you bend the rules? Would you become Raymond Cole? Think about that. Because he did, and he still thinks he made the right choice. That's the story of Detective Raymond Cole, LAPD, a man who wore a badge for 23 years and used it to commit atrocities. A man who sits in a maximum security prison, convinced he's a political prisoner rather than a criminal. A man who represents the darkest side of law enforcement, the side that believes authority means righteousness, that power means wisdom, that a badge means immunity. He's a cautionary tale, a warning, a reminder that the line between protector and predator is thinner than we want to believe. And sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones we trust to stop them. Until next time, stay safe out there. And remember, not everyone who wears a badge deserves your trust. Some of them are just better at hiding who they really are.